Hello and welcome to the Music for Elementary Teachers class. This week we're looking at Chapter 1, which is looking at some different theories of learning and how these theories will apply to integrating music into the elementary classroom curriculum. Hopefully a lot of these theories and teaching styles that we'll be talking about are familiar to you from other classes, and we'll pull up some of that background knowledge. First off, we're going to look at the three domains of learning, which are cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Traditionally, in education, we generally tend to focus on the cognitive skills or the cognitive domain, which is basically dealing with the learning, the thinking, the problem-solving aspects of school. But we also need to keep the other two in mind, which are the affective and the psychomotor, because they all tie together. Affective deals with people's emotions and feelings and how they feel about learning a topic or a subject that you're dealing with, and those feelings that come or emotions that come into it when they are in the learning process. The third one is the psychomotor, which is dealing with movement and how do you get students active and involved in the learning process, the physical activities. A lot of students learn better when you get them physically moving or physically active. Music is a great thing to incorporate. It will build both the affective and the psychomotor skills. Affective because music tends to lead to positive emotions and feelings towards different subjects or towards the classroom environment itself. And then music also is a good way to incorporate movement. It's easier to dance and to move and to get up and do things with music. And so if we can incorporate those two things, we can have a positive effect on the cognitive skills as well. Next, we're going to look at two different teaching styles that this chapter brings about, which is the difference between teacher-centered versus child-centered classroom. A teacher-centered classroom is where the teacher is the primary focus, usually lecture style format you would think of, where the teacher is giving information for the students, defining things, explaining things to them. Basically, the student's role is to think about, memorize, understand, learn the information that is being given to them by the teacher. Opposite of that is the child-centered classroom, which focuses more on getting the students involved, making them active and more of the focal point of a classroom. In this type of classroom, instead of the teacher being the center of the attention, the teacher is more of the facilitator or the guide in the classroom. Students are working together, problem solving, taking on that active role in the learning process. I think one thing to keep in mind is that there's probably a place for both styles in the classroom. There are times that you need to just lecture and give direct instruction to your students, but research is telling us that we need to limit that amount of teacher-centered teaching time and have more child-centered time, where students are actively involved in that process and moving and doing and getting involved with what is going on with the material. One way that many classrooms are getting students active and involved in that learning process is through cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is when you have small groups of students working together on a topic or an assignment or a project. Usually these groups are heterogeneously grouped, which means varying ability levels within that classroom, usually within the same age group, so within second grade or third grade, but mixing up by ability levels, having them, that's what heterogeneous grouping means. Again, in this type of setting, the teacher is the facilitator, a resource, a guide. Students are working together, they're collaborating, communicating, creating as they interact with each other. It's a great way to build their interpersonal skills, which also tends to lead to a positive affective feelings about what's going on in that classroom. Next, we have interdisciplinary teaching. So this one is huge for this class that we're in right now. Interdisciplinary teaching is when you incorporate or you combine different subjects together on one topic. So your cross it's cross curricular teaching is what it is. So you might integrate, you might be studying the same topic in science and math, and you figure out how they fit together. For example, on the handout here I have that it's 5th grade. You might have language arts, science, music, and social studies teachers all working together to do a unit on rivers. And so each one of them is doing something within their subject about rivers. Now, typically as an elementary teacher, you're going to be teaching all of those subjects, the language arts, the science, and the social studies. Music, that would typically be a different teacher, but you could pull music, activities, songs, dancing, whatever, into your curriculum that deal with rivers, and that would be a thematic teaching unit that you might be doing. So you might also hear it called thematic teaching. You might also hear it integrated teaching. It could also be team teaching. Now, team teaching is slightly different because team teaching is where you would work with that music teacher maybe, and the music teacher in her classroom or his classroom would be doing things related to rivers as well. Integrated would be when you would bring music into your elementary classroom, not so much working with the music teacher, but you would just be adding that to your classroom as an additional piece to your social studies class or to your language arts class. You've probably heard about Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences in some of your other classes that you've had, but we're going to review that just a little bit. So Howard Gardner believes that we are all born with and have these innate abilities. And these are his different areas of intelligences that he's come up with that we could all have our strengths in. Typically in the classroom, they are in school, logical and linguistic, which is mathematical, reading and writing. Those are usually the two areas that have been emphasized in the past in the education setting. But Howard Gardner says we need to incorporate all of these other things. We need to incorporate kinesthetic, which is movement. We need to incorporate the musical, which is what our class is focusing on. How do you bring music into that classroom? Because you have students that are talented in those areas or that learn better while having movement or while incorporating music into the curriculum. And so we need to focus on that and find different ways to hit all these different styles and learning needs within our classroom. One way that we can meet those different needs of the students in our classroom is through differentiated instruction, or you might hear them refer to it as DI. DI, or differentiated instruction, is basically adjusting the curriculum or adjusting how you teach in order to meet the needs of your students. That could be based upon ability levels, it could be based upon learning styles, Gardner's multiple intelligences. Differentiated instruction says that you can change 3 different aspects of the lesson. You can change the content, the process, or the product. Content says you're going to adjust the material for the different needs of your students. Process says that you adjust how you teach it to your students. You give them different opportunities to learn in different ways. And product says that you will adjust what students produce or how they show you what they're learning. So you adjust what they're doing in that learning process. And then it goes on to say that you can adjust things depending on the student's readiness, their interest, or their learning profile. So hopefully in this class we're going to be learning about different ways to incorporate music into our curriculum in order to meet those different areas of student needs. Mostly probably interest and the learning profile is how music is going to fit into this, and how we're going to see how we can get music to make that learning process better for our students.